watch a special called The Levees Broke that Spike Lee did. Go watch a bunch of shit to understand this is not just some, yo, Katrina happened, nigga said, nah, nigga, my city is gone, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So your request was not uncalled for, even though you got an advance. It was a catastrophic situation that happened.
Cam, big brother, that's how I felt about it. I was like, say, bro, you just gave me an advance, but this situation, I just not to soften it up, but I don't think he understood the detrimental situation of Katrina at the moment, you dig? Because when I told him to help me, he basically told me to get on the road. He was like, you better get on the road. Like, get on the road? I ain't got no home to go to.
Yeah. Where am I going?
Nobody expected this. Not hip-hop fans, not industry insiders, not even the people who have been watching the ongoing tension between these New York legends for years. Out of nowhere, the internet erupted when 50 Cent, Mr. Power Moves, Mr. Petty King, Mr. I don't lose feuds, I collect trophies, jumped into the podcast world with a threat that sent shockwaves across the entire culture. In a late-night burst of trolling, shade, and pure calculated chaos, 50 publicly teased the idea of buying out Jim Jones and Maino's entire podcast platform. And the moment he said it, the whole rap world froze like someone had yanked the power cord out of the internet. But the real explosion didn't hit until Camron, Harlem's wildest mic assassin, the man who built a career on disrespecting people with a smirk, finally reacted. And Asen, when Cam saw what 50 posted, bro, you could practically hear Harlem wake up. The reaction wasn't polite, it wasn't careful, it wasn't subtle. It was classic Cam, loud, raw, sarcastic, disrespectful, and dripping with the kind of comedic venom only he can deliver. This wasn't business. This wasn't friendship. This wasn't a casual take. This was Harlem versus Queens energy igniting all over again. And let's be honest, the history between these guys is messy enough that fans didn't even know what side to stand on. Because Jim Jones and Maino just started building momentum with their gritty, street-coded podcast energy. Interviews, beef breakdowns, city politics, industry secrets. And just when it looked like they were catching a wave, 50 Cent popped up like the final boss of New York drama. The second 50 said the words, "I might buy their show." The internet didn't laugh, it screamed. People were already posting memes before Cam even opened his mouth. Fans were arguing over whether 50 was trolling, threatening, or actually planning to pull the move. And Jim Jones? Maino. Their silence only fueled the fire, as if even they didn't know which direction things were about to go. But when Camron saw the post, he jumped in like the pink mink-wearing superhero Harlem never asked for but always needed. His reaction wasn't just a clapback. It was a full-scale comedic demolition, the type of response only Camron can deliver without blinking. Cam didn't just respond, he violated, he laughed, he mocked. He flipped the entire situation into pure entertainment. He reminded the world why he is one of the greatest professional petty men to ever touch a microphone. But beneath all the jokes, the sarcasm, the legendary Camron disrespect, there was something else brewing, something fans instantly noticed. He wasn't defending Jim Jones. He wasn't siding with 50 Cent. He was stirring the pot. Because Cam knows one thing better than anybody in hip-hop. When 50 Cent throws a grenade, the smartest man in the room is the one who throws gasoline on the explosion. And that's exactly what Cam did. Screenshots of 50's threats started going viral. Clips of Cam's reaction started trending. The comment sections became an all-out war. Fans were screaming, "Nah, Cam WILDIN. 50 acting different again. Jim and Maino better respond ASAP. This is about to get legendary." The entire culture knew instantly. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't random. This wasn't harmless. This was the start of a new chapter in New York rap drama, with 50 Cent holding the detonator, Jim and Maino's futures hanging in the air, and Camron standing in the middle ready to make the entire internet collapse with one sarcastic comment. And what he said is about to flip this whole situation upside down, long before 50 Cent ignited this latest nuclear explosion, before Camron laughed his way into the center of chaos, before Jim Jones and Maino even realized their podcast was in 50's crosshairs. There was years of history boiling underneath all of them. This drama didn't appear out of thin air. This tension wasn't random. This reaction wasn't accidental. This is years of ego, territory, rivalry, and New York politics finally erupting at the same exact moment. And to understand why the internet went crazy over 50 Cent threatening to buy the Jim Jones and Maino podcast, you have to go back to the roots, to the history between these men, their alliances, their betrayals, and the subtle disrespect that's been simmering for years. Because their connections run deep, and their conflicts run even deeper. Let's start with 50 Cent, the undisputed king of petty warfare, the man who built half his career off beefing. He doesn't threaten to buy your podcast unless he's sending a message. And with Jim Jones, that message is personal. Their history is layered. The Dipset era versus G-Unit era, the New York dominance war, the subliminal shots, the rumors of behind-the-scenes tension, the long-standing competitive energy between Harlem and Queens, and 50's reputation for shutting down anything he sees as competition. Jim Jones has always been proud, loud, Harlem to the bone. And that energy has historically clashed with 50's "I run this" attitude. Even when they weren't publicly beefing, there was always an unspoken rivalry in the room. Industry insiders have said for years, 50 respects Jim, but he does not fear him. And that drives Jim crazy. But Jim Jones isn't alone anymore, because Maino stepped into the picture. Maino and Jim became brothers through the streets, through struggle, through respect. Their podcast wasn't just a business venture. It was two New York OGs building a space for street stories, real talk, and gritty energy no corporate platform could reproduce. The podcast started rising fast, views climbing, clips going viral, guests pulling up. A raw New York authenticity, the culture MISSED, and then 50 saw it. And 50 reacted exactly the way 50 always reacts when someone starts getting too close to his territory. He doesn't congratulate you, he doesn't ignore you, he doesn't silently compete. He attacks with a joke that's not actually a joke. That's how he neutralizes competition. Humiliate first, then assess. Threaten first, then strategize. So when 50 wrote that he might buy Jim and Maino's podcast, it wasn't a punchline. It was a warning shot. A warning shot that said, "I'm bigger, I'm richer, I'm the boss. I can take your platform if I feel like it." But this story gets deeper, way deeper. Because 50 Cent has a long history of buying things connected to people he has issues with. Remember when he bought entire sections of Ja Rule's concert seats just so they'd be empty? Remember when he outbid people just to embarrass them? Remember when he purchased trademarks connected to enemies? Remember how he weaponizes his money as psychological warfare? So when 50 said he might buy Jim and Maino's podcast, the culture knew he wasn't bluffing. But here is where things get insane. Camron, the man who built an empire off hilarious disrespect and Harlem pride, has a history with both Jim Jones and 50 Cent. Cam and Jim were once inseparable. Brothers, ride or die, until they weren't. Their fallout wasn't light, it was ugly, explosive, emotional. Hurt feelings, money issues, leadership disputes, public fights, private tension, years of drifting apart. And when they finally made peace, it wasn't perfect. There were still cracks. There were still scars. There were still unresolved feelings from the Dipset breakup that changed the New York landscape forever. So when Cam saw 50 threatening to buy Jim's podcast, it triggered something in him, a mix of old grudges, old memories, and old Harlem pride. He didn't want to defend Jim, but he definitely didn't want 50 flexing on Harlem either. And that's when Cam reacted. But what most fans don't know is this: Camron secretly loves when 50 and Jim beef. Why? Because Cam feeds off chaos. He thrives when drama hits New York. He enjoys seeing people scramble. He enjoys stirring the pot. He enjoys watching rivals collide like trains. And the deeper twist, Camron has his own podcast, one that has skyrocketed in popularity faster than almost any hip-hop show in the past year. His chemistry with Mace, his unfiltered comedy, his fearlessness, that show is dominating. And the Jim and Maino podcast, it's rising in the same lane. So when 50 threatened to buy Jim's show, Cam didn't see it as beef. He saw it as free entertainment, fuel, content, a story that benefits HIM no matter what happens. If Jim looks weak, Cam wins. If Jim claps back, Cam wins. If 50 escalates, Cam wins. If Maino jumps in, Cam wins. If chaos hits New York, Cam wins. Because Cam knows how to turn any situation into a spotlight on himself. And the final piece of the background puzzle: there has been a secret rivalry between all three podcasts. Cam and Mace, Jim and Maino, 50's rumored new digital network. This isn't random. This isn't petty. This isn't coincidence. This is New York media war, and it has been brewing for months. Territory, influence, relevance, money. And now, 50 just lit the fuse. Jim is silent. Maino is watching. Cam is laughing. And the entire culture is waiting for the first major explosion. The moment 50 Cent threatened to buy Jim Jones and Maino's podcast, the entire New York media ecosystem snapped like a live wire. It wasn't just a joke anymore. It wasn't just trolling. It wasn't just another petty 50 Cent punchline. It was a declaration of war, and the tension behind the scenes exploded in every direction at once. Because while the internet was busy laughing, dropping memes, and picking sides, something much darker was brewing. A three-way power struggle that had been simmering for MO and THS beneath the surface. This wasn't about a podcast. This wasn't about content. This wasn't about clout. This was about control of New York's new digital empire, the future of rap media. And when 50 targeted Jim and Maino's platform, everybody who knew the real story said the same thing. This is personal. What the fans didn't know was that 50 wasn't acting alone. Behind closed doors, multiple companies, networks, and investors have been quietly watching Jim and Maino's rise, and they've been watching Camron's show dominate even harder. And in those circles, the money circles, rumors started spreading like wildfire. 50 had already been in talks to launch a new digital network. Not a show, not a segment, an entire network. And Jim and Maino's podcast was one of the first platforms those investors were eyeing. The problem? Camron's show was pulling numbers so insane that it made every other New York podcast look tiny in comparison. So now picture this. Two Harlem legends, Cam and Mace, controlling one of the biggest shows in the country. Two street kings, Jim and Maino, building momentum fast. And 50 Cent, the most feared troll in hip-hop, planning to own the whole landscape. That pressure was already boiling. 50's threat didn't create conflict. It triggered the conflict that had been waiting to explode. Behind the scenes, people close to Jim said he was furious, not publicly but privately. He didn't want to give 50 the satisfaction of a reaction. Jim has always hated looking weak, hated giving enemies leverage. But Maino was heated. Sources close to Maino say he felt disrespected, like 50 was trying to punk him publicly. One insider claimed, Maino said he's not letting anybody buy his voice, not even 50. But Maino also knew something was off, something Jim didn't want to admit. Camron was enjoying this. People in Jim's circle say Jim felt betrayed when he saw Cam laughing online. Even if Cam wasn't technically attacking him, the tone hurt, the sarcasm hurt, the timing hurt. Because Jim has always felt like Cam plays both sides, cool in public, mocking in private. And the deeper twist, someone from Cam's team leaked that Cam was planning to address the 50/Jim drama on his own show, turning their beef into his content. That alone made Jim livid. But it gets darker, because sources connected to 50 say that 50 wasn't bluffing. He actually made a call, an investor call, asking for numbers, asking for ownership percentages, asking for legal pathways to buy the Jim and Maino show. Fans thought he was being funny, but insiders say 50 really tried to buy it. And the moment Jim heard that, he snapped. A person close to Jim said, Jim felt like 50 was trying to embarrass him on a global stage. And Jim started digging into old issues, old beef, old interviews, old disrespect between him and 50 that fans forgot about. But the real twist came from Maino. Because Maino isn't a troll, he isn't petty online energy. Maino is a street guy, old school, respect first, ego-heavy, pride-filled. And when Maino saw Cam laughing at the situation, he allegedly told someone, I don't know why he's laughing, this ain't his business. That line circulated fast. It got back to Cam, and Cam, being Cam, didn't stay quiet. He snapped back indirectly with a joke that wasn't a joke. Everybody got a podcast until somebody with money want it. Fans knew exactly what that meant. Cam was taunting Jim, taunting Maino, taunting 50, taunting everybody. But the twist, he wasn't just stirring the pot. Insiders revealed that Cam had already been contacted by two major networks behind the scenes. One wanted to buy his show. The other wanted to buy Jim and Maino's show. And guess who the second network reached out to for advice? 50 Cent. That's the real bombshell. This wasn't about 50 trolling Jim. This wasn't even about money. This was business. This was a takeover. This was chess. 50 wanted to absorb the entire New York podcast scene, control it, shape it, own it, dominate it. And Jim found out that 50 wasn't just threatening to buy the show. 50 had already been talking to the people who could. That betrayal cut deep. But then the first twist landed. The one that turned this whole situation upside down. The twist nobody saw coming. Someone leaked a message from inside Jim's camp. Cam knew about 50's plan before Jim did. The internet lost its mind. Because if that's true, Cam wasn't just reacting. He was watching the bomb fall and laughing before it even hit the ground. Which means this isn't just 50 versus Jim and Maino. This is 50 versus Jim Maino versus Cam Jim versus Cam V's 50 Harlem versus Queens New York versus New York Ego V's. Ego and the real war hasn't even begun. The moment the leaks surfaced that Cam knew about 50's plan before Jim did, the internet didn't just react, it imploded. It felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer to the fragile piece that kept Harlem and Queens from turning their rivalry into an all-out digital war. Comments flew like bullets. Fans were screaming accusations across X, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. Cam was in ON it. 50 told HIM first. Jim GOTBACKDORD by his own brother. MAINO wake UP THEY playing you. This is about to be worse than DIPSCTV's G-Unit. But that leak wasn't even the real problem, it was what the leak implied. Because if 50 spoke to Cam first, and Cam didn't warn Jim, that means Cam didn't just react to the situation, he participated in shaping it. And the reason for that? Insiders say it goes way deeper than petty jokes. Here's what came out. According to someone close to the network's negotiating podcast deals, Camron had been offered something massive. A multi-million-dollar expansion deal for his own show. Killa Cam plus Mace plus the new sports network they were building. And guess whose podcast stood in the way of that expansion? Jim and Maino. The more their show grew, the more competing networks hesitated to give Cam the full control he wanted. The more noise their clips made, the more investors split their attention. The more power they gained, the more Cam's dominance was threatened. And the leak revealed the line that shook the streets. Cam knew 50 buying their show would clear the lane for him. That was the first part of the twist. But the second? Oh, Asen, the second part was vicious. According to another insider, someone deeply connected to multiple New York producers, Cam wasn't just aware of 50's interest. Cam allegedly helped push the idea. Screenshots began floating around private group chats, producers claiming Cam had been complaining about Jim and Maino behind the scenes for months. They think they're the new voice of New York. They acting like they invented gritty content. They copying my whole flow. They riding my wave. They want my spot. Fans didn't believe it at first. But then more leaks dropped. Longer messages, more direct, more personal. In one alleged message, Cam reportedly told someone, "If 50 wanna buy their podcast, let him, that ain't my problem." In another, "Might be better for the culture if he owns them." That one set the internet on fire, because suddenly everything made sense. Cam wasn't just laughing because it was funny, he was laughing because he benefited. 50's move didn't threaten him. It strengthened him. But then came the reveal nobody was prepared for. 50 Cent and Camron had a private phone call 2 weeks before the threat went public. A confidential source who works with a digital media investor leaked the truth. 50 called Cam asking how he felt about Jim's show growing. Cam didn't defend Jim. Cam didn't warn Jim. Cam told 50, "Do what you do." That line broke the culture. Jim Jones fans raged. Camron fans fought back. 50 Cent fans held popcorn. Maino fans waited for smoke. But the darkest part, according to the leak, Cam told 50 exactly how to play it to make the internet explode. Cam allegedly said, "Just say you gonna buy it. They gone lose their minds." That was the setup, that was the spark, that was the trigger, and 50 pulled it perfectly, but the chaos didn't stop there. The twist got even bigger when a third person entered the battlefield, someone who had been quiet for too long. Mace, Cam's co-host, Harlem legend, the calm voice behind the chaos, reportedly confronted Cam privately about the situation. Someone close to Cam leaked the alleged conversation. Mace: "Did you tell Jim what 50 was planning?" Cam: "For what?" Mace: "Because that's our brother." Cam: "He hasn't been my brother in a long time." That line cracked the hip-hop timeline like an earthquake. Because only real insiders knew the truth. The Dipset wounds never healed. The tears never dried. The betrayal never disappeared. They just buried it under maturity until now. But the real shocking reveal came from Maino's camp. Someone from Maino's circle posted anonymously, "Maino feels like someone close to Jim is feeding 50 information." The internet froze. Who could it be? Who would betray Jim? And then a bombshell dropped. A screenshot surfaced showing a message from a person in Jim's inner circle exchanging laughing emojis with 50 Cent. And the name blurred in the screenshot. Fans swear it looked like someone Jim Trusts. Someone who's been with him during the podcast recordings. Someone who handles media strategy. Someone who organizes bookings. Someone who talks to networks. If this person was secretly in contact with 50, that means 50 didn't just attack the show from outside. He had someone cracking the show from the inside. But the escalation didn't end there. Because the final reveal of this section flipped everything. A document leaked showing that 50 Cent actually submitted a proposal to buy the Jim and Maino podcast, and it was real. Not a joke, not a comment, not trolling. A legal proposal with branding plans, ownership percentages, and projected revenue estimates. Which proves 50 wasn't playing. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't Twitter comedy. This was war. And now, the strategist behind it all, the man who sparked the most violence without raising his voice, about to step into the center. Everything the internet had seen so far, the phone calls, the leaks, the screenshots, the investor rumors, Cam's laughter, Maino's anger, Jim's silence, 50's threat, was nothing compared to the bombshell that detonated next. Because everything up until this moment looked like ego, jokes, competition, petty flexing. But now the truth finally came out. This wasn't a feud. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a setup. A carefully constructed plan. A trap. An ambush. A digital chess game built to crush one man's show while boosting someone else's. And the man at the center of that trap, Jim Jones. Because as the internet dug deeper, insiders began whispering about something much darker. Something that connected 50 Cent's threat, Camron's laughter, and the inside leak from Jim's own circle. A puzzle piece nobody expected suddenly appeared. A document surfaced from a media insider, a timeline of meetings, investor calls, and internal communications, and it revealed a horrifying twist. Jim's podcast had a major investor pulling out 2 days before 50 made the threat. And the disappearance of that investor was not random. That investor didn't walk away because of poor numbers. He didn't walk away because of content. He didn't walk away because of budget. He walked away because someone very close to the situation had convinced him that Jim and Maino's show was unstable, directionless, and too risky. Who said that? Who had the influence? Who had the media power? Who had the relationships with those investors? The answer sent the entire culture into a spiral. It was a name nobody expected, a name people respect, a name connected to all three men. The investor pulled out because of a private conversation with Mace. The internet stopped. Live streams froze mid-sentence. Bridges between fan bases collapsed instantly. People were screaming, "What? $MA$E? No way he BACKDORD Jim. This whole time Cam was distracting US. MASE did the dirt." This just flipped the whole story, because here's the insane truth. While everyone was looking at Camron, the real traitor had been sitting quietly beside him. The calm one, the patient one, the silent one. According to leaked emails and insider testimony, Mace had 3 conversations with executives behind Jim and Maino's podcast. In those conversations, confirmed by multiple sources, he allegedly said, "Their show won't last. They don't have structure. Too much street energy, not enough professionalism. Uncertain long-term direction. And worst of all, they're not stable enough for major corporate investment." That one sentence alone cost Jim and Maino's podcast a 6-figure deal. But why would Mace sabotage Jim? Why would someone known as a peacemaker pull strings behind the scenes? The answer came from a source close to Cam and Mace's production team. Mace was trying to protect their network. Jim's show was rising too fast. This wasn't personal. This was business, and the shocking part, Camron knew. He didn't orchestrate it, he didn't direct it, but he knew the moment it happened. He knew the investor pulled out because of Mace. He knew Jim was vulnerable. He knew the timing was perfect. So when 50 Cent called Cam and said he wanted to buy the show, Cam LAUGHED, not because he wanted to clown Jim, but because he knew Jim's team was already falling apart from the inside. Then came the twist that destroyed the internet. 50 Cent knew too. He didn't threaten Jim randomly. He didn't pick the podcast by chance. He targeted Jim because someone tipped him off that Jim's investor pulled out, making the show unstable, vulnerable, and easy to acquire. And the leak revealed who told 50. A text message, verified by multiple media insiders, from Mace's assistant to 50's team. The message said, "They just lost their investor. Move now and you can take it." The internet exploded. This meant that 50 knew the timing, Cam knew the timing, Mace caused the timing, Jim was blindsided, Maino was clueless. And the internet was watching the wrong person the entire time, while the culture was blaming Camron for laughing. Mace was quietly pulling strings like a chess master. But the darkest part? Jim found out. A source close to Jim Jones said he saw the leaked text and he broke down, not angry, not yelling, not threatening. He just sat in silence, because it wasn't 50 that hurt him. It wasn't Cam's laughter that cut him. It was Mace, the last person he expected to move against him. According to the insider, Jim said, "Out of everyone, him?" That was the moment everything shifted, because now, this isn't 50 versus Jim, or Cam versus Jim, or Maino versus Cam. This is something else. Jim Jones versus a man he never saw coming, and the podcast world is about to explode. And the cliffhanger is this. Mace hasn't responded, Cam hasn't defended him. 50 Cent is laughing, Jim is silent. Maino is enraged, investors are circling, fans are dividing, receipts are leaking. And the next move. It's going to be the most violent chapter of this entire story. If you're still here after this entire breakdown, then you already know you've just watched one of the most shocking turns in New York hip-hop media history. For years, fans thought the rivalry was between Cam and Jim, or 50 and Jim, or Maino, and whoever stepped left. But what we just uncovered flips the entire story upside down, because the real chess moves weren't being made by the loudest voices, the most animated personalities, or the men cracking jokes on camera. The most devastating move of all came from the silent one, the calm one, the pastor, the peacemaker. And that alone should scare everybody. This story is far from over, because Jim Jones has seen the leaks. Maino has seen the receipts. 50 Cent is already preparing his next troll move, probably smiling as he types it. Camron is sitting on his couch with his feet up, knowing the entire internet is waiting for his next sarcastic reaction. And Mace, he's the one people are watching now. The one who has to answer the question the entire world is asking. Why sabotage Jim? Why now? And who else was part of this plan? The next chapter of this story is going to be insane. Confrontations, indirect shots, interviews, podcast episodes loaded with subliminal, and insiders leaking even more information behind the scenes. And trust me, the moment one of these men steps in front of a microphone, the internet is going to explode all over again. So make sure you don't miss a single update. Hit that subscribe button right now, turn on your notifications, and stay locked in, because when the next leak drops, you're going to want to be the first to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Mace really sabotaged Jim's podcast behind the scenes? Was Cam laughing because he knew what was coming? Is 50 Cent about to make a major power move in the media space? Or is this all about ego, money, and dominance in New York's podcast wars? Your comments, your theories, your engagement, that's what keeps this investigative marathon going. Share this video everywhere, send it to your group chats, tag your favorite creators, and let the culture know what's really happening behind the scenes. The war has officially started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.